Hello historians, welcome to Decoding the Test and a quick look at the Cold War. As always, I would want you to know a lot more about this time period to guarantee a high-level score. In fact, I would want you to know all the details you see on the slide in front of you. But if you look at what the test is focused on again and again and again, you keep coming up with a few basic categories. You come up with the economic boom following the GI Bill. You come up with the crisis moments. You come up with Vietnam and Korea. You come up with executive power and the containment and domino theory. And finally, you come up with détente, the kind of scaling down of hostilities between the United States and the Soviet Union that took place in the late 1970s. Now with détente, it really revolves around one thing, China. So let's take a look. Now China, just like the Soviet Union, is communist. And they were good buddies up until about the 60s, early 70s, at which point they started to split apart and actually become fairly hostile to one another. So Richard Nixon, President Nixon, who usually gets just really torn up by historians because of, almost impeached, well, he actually has a very positive impact on the Cold War. Richard Nixon visits communist China, and it's the first time a U.S. president had done that. And he really basically improves America's relations with communist China and kind of gives this idea that just because they're communist doesn't mean we can't trade with them, doesn't mean that we can't have good relations. The Soviet Union, seeing that, started to feel pretty isolated. They really didn't want the US and China to team up against them. So what did that do? It actually made the Soviet Union much more likely to seek out a kind of chill, to seek out a kind of peace to the Cold War. So you got a couple results. One of them is what you see in the question here, the SALT Treaty. The SALT Treaty was an arms treaty with Russia, and what really influenced that was Nixon opening up diplomatic relations with China. The Soviet Union was much more willing to sign an arms treaty because it was much more willing to play nice with the United States because it didn't want to see China and the United States teaming up against it. Okay, here you get President Richard Nixon's first inaugural. And it's talking about having basically an era of negotiation, an era where hostility is not our first response. What does this lead to? And you gotta like this quote. We cannot expect to make everyone our friend, but we can try to make no one our enemy. What does this lead to? Again, it's answer choice A, normalization of relations with China. He seeks out good relations with China, which would in turn cause relations with the Soviet Union to improve. So what do you need to know about this time period in the Cold War, which we call détente? What do you need to know about détente? It's characterized by a split between Communist China and the Communist Soviet Union. It's characterized by President Richard Nixon visiting China and normalizing relations, and it's characterized by the Soviet Union not wanting to be put aside or ganged up on, and also improving relations. So it's actually a really good period of the Cold War. If there's no questions, comments, or screams of angst, I will see you in the next video.